Hello, good morning, everyone. Today is a good day. Happy Sunday. For some of you, this might be the end of your week. For some, it might be the beginning of your week. For me, how I really hold it is that Sundays are the beginning of my week. So not only are we in this this fresh early morning time where things are really unformed. For me, since I really hold this as the beginning of the week, this is really that formless or water time of the week where the mindset, the actions I take, the intention I put in will determine the trajectory of the week. And so it's a wonderful morning to be here in these conversations around creativity and possibility. So just grateful to be here. And good morning, Darlene. I see that you just logged on. Good morning, Monica. It's great to see that everybody is up and greeting the day. So today, I'd like to just share some reflections around connection and recovering a sense of connection as we work on the topics and the practices of recovering our creativity. So I see, before we go further, I see Henrietta and Kathy are on. Good morning, Henrietta. Good morning, Kathy. So this is a really powerful chapter, actually. This chapter talks about, first of all, this artist's way or this creative way of listening, and how are we listening into those inspired images that are coming to us and not dismissing them as fancy or not practical. So I think this is really powerful. This has been a new, since exploring the artist's way and really committing to the practices and bolstering my own creativity. This has been a new way to focus my attention, a new way to go through life. And the phrase that helps me, that I read, that I will often repeat as a little mantra to remind me, is listening in a creative sense to those inspired images and impulses that are coming to us. That art is more about getting something down versus thinking something up. And I'll say that again, that art is more about getting something down than thinking something up. For years I was steeped in the art of thinking things up. I'd sit there and strain and I'd put down a certain time that I was going to work on this project or come up with ideas to make this project go. And it was very labor intensive, actually, very exhausting, because it was 10 o'clock on Tuesday. I had written down that I was going to quote 10 a.m. Tuesday, be spontaneous and be creative, and whether I felt like it or not. And that was that was kind of exhausting, to be honest with you. And Julia Cameron, in her frame of creativity, was really helpful, is to notice those inspired images, those rushes of creative impulse that are coming to us, and just following them, trusting them, no matter how whimsical they might seem at the beginning, to see those those creative images and start working on journaling about them, sketching them out in a sketching pad, getting them down in whatever form they're offered, whenever they're offered. And so I think that's really powerful. And what came up for me was this documentary that I watched on Mozart, and they talked about how these symphonies, he wasn't, as an artist, he wasn't trying to think up a symphony. This music was playing inside of him, and he was just trying to get it down on paper as fast as it was coming to him. And so that was helpful, because when I heard her instruction and I remembered that, I thought, in each of our areas of creativity, whether it's whatever our medium of art is, and I've said it before, whether your art is business, it's painting, sculpting, writing, whatever it is, and those inspirations come, that we can almost get to this point where instead of thinking things up, we're taking dictation. I thought that was great, like a stenographer in a courtroom, just taking down what's being said. And once I started to really tie into this notion of getting things down or taking dictation with my creativity, not judging it, just letting it flow from my mind and those inspired images right on to pulling out a piece of paper and starting to write about it, sketch it, putting it, having a place for it. So when I was ready to start to develop that, and I felt inspired to develop that into a plan that I could actually deliver into some area. Once I started that process, that really shifted things for me, because it was a different way to create, is taking dictation and getting things down. And how I hold that now with regard to listening in that way is, I'm opening up my mind to those creative channels, and I'm not trying to force things anymore. I'm trusting those impulses, and I'm paying attention to when they come, and then I'm taking action when they come, and I'm starting to bring them into the world in very small ways, like journaling about them, like sketching them on a sketch pad, in just very small ways, and then seeing if there's more motivation to bring them further and see how far they want to go. And what I do is I notice what my excitement is. If my excitement and my enthusiasm keeps building as I'm doing it, I trust that, I follow that. If I get something down and the motivation kind of ends there, well, I trust that. I just set that sketch, I set that journal entry aside, and just trusting that it may be complete in and of itself. In other words, it was its own joy just to journal about it, and it may never turn into anything. And I may take it, set it aside, and it may be like taking a seed and putting it in the soil and just seeing if it starts to grow. All of a sudden, one day, you notice that, hey, this idea for this project just won't go away, and there's still a lot of excitement and energy behind it. Well, then I'll trust that, and then I'll start to have conversations around that, and I'll start to develop plans and keep following that. Some of you that are listening, I see Sonia's on, and Elizabeth is on, and Joseph's on, and Dave's on. Some of you have been on these journeys with me around these beginning ideas of getting them down and talking about them, and then all of a sudden they have turned into real life experiences and events, and they have gone from imagination to operation. And so it's I guess, really quite amazing and just very poetic that some of you that I've been in this process with around creative ideation and then, planning it out to execution are right here on the call and right here on this morning reflection. So that's great. That's beautiful. So this notion of listening and getting things down versus thinking things up. And then the next area in this topic of connection is around perfectionism. She really talks a lot about perfectionism and goes right to the core of perfectionism. Doesn't waste much time, and says, she declares that perfectionism for the creative, for the artist, is a search for the worst in ourselves. That's a big statement, that perfectionism, she asserts, is a search for the worst in ourselves. And she says it's seductive because it looks on the surface like the perfectionism is all about having high standards. But when you pull that back, when you peel that back and you look at the motivation behind perfectionism, the perfectionist is taking the perfectionistic mirror, and they are trying to hold it up to their creativity, their life, in a search, not as a mirror that looks for the best, but a mirror to look for every flaw. And that's its whole intent, is to find the worst that is in us. And that's what is destructive to our creative life, is when we have an internal perfectionistic mirror that is bringing attention to, highlighting, and giving power to all the flaws that we see versus all the talents, abilities, and amazing parts of ourselves. So I thought that was really powerful to just call it out, and she also, perfectionism is an important topic to discuss in creative recovery, because it also is one of the two Achilles heels of a creative person or an artist. Is we talked about that yesterday, is artistic anorexia. In other words, starving yourself of all abundance until you, quote, make it or arrive and are successful in the outside world. And the other one is prideful perfectionism. So in the last 2 days, we've really explored the two biggest barriers often to a creative recovery and to expressing our creativity in art. So I think that's really important to share that as we continue these conversations. She said something else that I think is just really good for all of us. Is she said, after we start to realize and become aware that perfectionism is a search for the worst in ourselves, and we start to soften that, we start to call it out for what it is. And a good phrase that I use is strive for excellence, not perfection. So I started to adopt that many years ago. Strive for excellence, not perfection. In other words, take a look at your last work that you put out into the world and just strive to improve it and keep this upward spiral moving, but staying away from this notion of it's final and perfect. So the phrase that I think can be helpful with this, and that she shares in the book, is that, I'll try to paraphrase it in as powerfully as she shared it, which was, once we can get to this notion and this belief that doing something worthwhile, especially worthwhile on a creative level might even be worth doing badly. So I'll say that again, that once we start to open up to the idea that doing something worthwhile may even be worth doing badly to begin with, then we can start to give ourselves permission to follow those creative impulses, put out that first beginning piece of work, whatever that creative project is, that first seminar, that first event, that first painting, whatever it is, and let it come out without judgment. We talked about that. Judgment, attachment, and resistance. Just let it be, and then start to work with it and reshape it, and let it start to become more and more of what you had imagined. But to trust those initial creative impulses and allow them to come forward, and then work with them and build them from whatever point that they come out of us when we manifest that first project. So perfectionism, an important conversation on a creative recovery, and I think it's something just a wonderful thing to revisit over and over. Even as I'm sharing here, I'm deepening that awareness and in myself, and as I share it. So it's a mutual thing to share it and keep reminding ourselves that to strive for excellence and soften our prideful perfectionism. So our very last topic to explore here this morning is jealousy, and I thought this was a really good conversation piece. She, like we talked about in an earlier post, she's talked about anger. Anger is a map. It tells us, it's a map that tells us what position we would like to hold, or what we care about. So jealousy is a map, much like anger. In other words, it's not to be acted out. It's there for us to be acted upon, and it's a map that tells us what position in life, or what identity someone else is holding that we would like to hold for ourselves. And that doesn't mean that we have to bump them off so we can take their position. It simply tells us, hey, I see this person is over here doing this. I feel that jealousy. I recenter myself. I remind myself jealousy is a map, and I say, I see, Tracy has this position that is bringing up jealousy in me. It tells me that, I'm going to start journaling about this jealousy is telling me that, I'd like to hold that position too. I'd like to be a playwright, or own a business like Tracy, or travel internationally like Tracy does. And so then the focus then becomes off of Tracy, and then I can start to shift that into what are the steps that I need to take, or I can take, in order to start to move towards this thing that I'm really longing for in my life. I think that can be powerful because we've often we're taught not to jealousy is bad, or it's a character flaw, and it can turn into, in my experience, it can turn into something destructive if we don't know how to work with it, and we can't recenter, have an instructive narrative like jealousy is a map, and then use that map in order to start working towards what it is that we're longing for and yearning for, that was revealed to us by our jealousy of this other person. This way, once I am able to do that, able to become clear on what it is that I'm longing for, then Tracy can still have her amazing life in this example, and now I can start to be in the process and on the road to creating that in my life as well. So we can both have that. So that's I think it was a powerful frame around our creative recovery and using things like anger and today specifically and jealousy as maps to help lead us and guide us on what it is we're truly longing for in our life. So those are the three areas that I wanted to share and reflect upon today. I'm enriched by sharing them. I hope that what we've talked about spurs something in you or opens something for each of you who are here live right now, or even those that listen on the recording later. With that, I see Hannah is on, so good morning, Hannah. And so with that, I'd like to just start to transition into centering and towards our meditation this morning. So I just invite you to either stand or sit. And let's start by relaxing our eyes, so softening our eyes. So we're trying to take in a broad view with our eyes, not letting go of that tension that only allows us to see focused detail. One imagery exercise is to just soften your eyes. Imagine your eyes are sinking in an inch back into our eye sockets, letting go of some of that vigilance. Relaxing your jaw and chin. Let's bring our shoulders up, clench our fists, and let that go. Shoulders up, and let that go. And opening your chest, expanding your chest. Relaxing your diaphragm, that lower border of your rib cage. Relaxing your belly. Relaxing your pelvic muscles. And one way to do that is go into the contraction, like your shoulders. So contracting your pelvis, pulling it up and in. And then let that go. Good. Contract your hips, pull them up and in, and then let that go. Relaxing your thighs and knees, and calves and feet. And just creating some relaxation, releasing the tension in your body, and creating some internal space. Notice your mood right now. Meeting that without judgment, attachment, or resistance. And then from here, let's begin to center, cultivating our self-awareness. So first notice how you're feeling in your length from top to bottom. And let's just take some time here to center. So we're centering in our length, aligning in our length. We're both straightening our vertical line and settling at the same time. The imagery here can be of feeling yourself as a bridge between heaven and earth. So our vertical line on a somatic awareness level, it's our line of dignity and power. When we're feeling empowered, we're feeling respected, just extending into our vertical line. And then bringing our attention and energy to our hands, left hand on your chest, right hand on your belly. So we're bringing attention to our somatic width. This is our balance, left to right, and connecting that to our connection between self and others, or this art of taking care of ourselves while taking care of others. Feel your personal boundaries here. Bring to mind one way that you took care of yourself intentionally yesterday, something you've already done perhaps for yourself today, and something you intend to do this week. And then extending your arms out, and as you extend them out a bit, just start to include someone else in the room, or maybe you can just expand your attention and awareness to some other living thing like a pet. I see the trees out to my right here. Just start to including them in my field of awareness while still feeling myself. And then extending out a little further and extending out to include somebody who's not here. And just imagine them in the room with you, someone who's been your good friend, a confidant, an ally of yours. And then let's extend out a little further and see if we can include somebody who is an adversary or an opponent, and extending out to them, letting go of those grievances. And bring our arms down, feeling that centeredness in our width, feeling that centeredness in our length. And then let's begin by bringing our attention to our depth. So feeling that space in front of you as your future, where you're headed, who you're becoming. And feel the space behind you. You can even lean back, just feeling that space behind you as your history, all the experiences that have shaped you at your back, your competencies, your talents at your back, your teachers at your back, your parents and grandparents at your back. And then extending forward, connecting to your inspired visions, your yearnings, your longings. Perhaps even in this artist's way, if you've experienced jealousy, recenter on that, allow it to become a map for you, allow it to be reframed and reveal some of your deepest yearnings and longings, and then bring attention to that. And imagine you experiencing that in your life. And the amazing path that you can walk on the way to that creative path. And let's center here. So we're finding that balance point between the space in front of us, the space behind us. Let's bring attention and energy to your right hand. Feel the temperature of your hand. Mine feels warm right now. Place that just below your navel. So bringing your attention there. Feel the shape of your hand and the temperature of your hand on your belly. And let's take 3 deep breaths together. So a deep breath in. And exhale. And a deep breath in to your sense of purpose. And a deep breath in, into the mystery. allowing your mind to just fathom some of those big mysteries in life, that which is beyond our human knowing. And just take a moment to settle there. I invite you to just slowly close your eyes and start to enter that inner space. And as we begin here, set your intention. Remind yourself, for the sake of what, that you're doing this meditation practice. And as in previous mornings, allow yourself to continue to stay in the meditation. If you feel a pull to do so, even after the closing chime, just continue to sit there for as long as it feels right to you. And we'll enter in with the words of the poet David White in the poem Enough. Enough. These words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life, this creative life. We have refused again and again. Until now. Until now. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again. Until now. Until now. And as we close our practice today, remind yourself again, for the sake of what? And then on your next exhale, slowly begin to move your arms and legs. And then very slowly and very gently begin to open your eyes and let the outside world come back in again. Take a moment to notice your mood right now. Notice if that's shifted. Notice the thoughts you're thinking and if they've shifted. As you start to cultivate this awareness, begin to allow this awareness to shape your day, the trajectory of your day, where you'll put your attention, where you'll put your energy, where you'll create your plans. And allow this state of presence, this state of awareness to create inspired action in you. So I want to thank all of you for sharing the time this morning. It's a real blessing to be able to connect virtually during our times of social distancing and all these new behaviors and new practices that we're all in for very good reasons. And these creative ways and these commitments in order to feel a sense of connection and community are quite amazing. So thank you all. And tomorrow I'm going to start exploring reflections on recovering a sense of strength from the Artist's Way book. And again, that's all part of this bigger conversation around expanding our inner freedom. This space that exists between the stimulus and the response, called the self-awareness, cultivating our self-awareness, cultivating our creative imagination, our independent will, and the cultivation of our conscience, our ability to discern what's right and what's wrong. So blessings to you, everybody, and wishing you a creative and inspired day. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. Bye for now.